where am I at now? Where do I want to be? And what do I need to learn? Who do I need to meet? What skills do I need to develop to get me to the point where I want to be? And I don't care if you want your life to be fishing and hunting every day after you're done with the military, or if you want it to be living in Manhattan, if you want to jet set like I'm talking about and travel, and what does that look like? What do you need to do? Who do you need to know? What skills do you need to develop in order to get you where you want to be?
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Hello and welcome to 7 Echo Podcast. I am your host, Heather Clark, and I'm very excited to be here today with not only a fellow Navy sailor, but a fellow podcaster, Mr. Travis Johnson, who many may not know is actually still active duty and doing all this cool stuff that we're going to start talking about today. And I'm very excited to have him here. Travis, thank you for being here so much. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Heather. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, glad to have you here and glad to pick your brain since you have such a successful podcast, the Nonprofit Architect podcast. And actually, I was just listening to one with Lane Boulogne today. I don't know him personally, but he was on a documentary series that I've been asked to be on. So I was familiar with the name and listened to the podcast earlier before I got on here today, and good stuff. So Travis, tell the audience a little bit about you. You have like this really great website that was so clean cut, and anything that you wanted to know, you could just click on. I thought that was really cool. And when I read your bio, there's no getting around what I read is you did kind of have a rough childhood. And could you just kind of speak to us about where you're from, what made you decide to join the Navy, what you do in the Navy, and go from there?
Of course, I can talk for as little or as long as you would like me to talk. If you want to cut me off or jump in, throw the little paw up there and I'll wrap it up and see what you want to hop in on, because I could talk about everyone's favorite topic themselves, right, for quite a long time. But yeah, to cover the bio stuff in there, probably caught your eye was, what do you do after 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 foster homes, surviving 2 murder attempts, and getting in serious trouble with the law? Well, I don't know what you would do, but I graduated high school after that. And it's kind of a rough upbringing. And depending on who you asked, they were like, what do you mean 36 moves? What do you mean 5 foster homes? You survived 2 murder attempts? And
crazy story.
They were like, how does that even happen? And then I usually try to lighten the mood by saying something like, well, do you know how hard it is to get thug life lasered off your knuckles? Like, and it calms them down a little bit. But the Navy was one of like the 3 best decisions I've ever made.
Mine too.
Following Jesus, joining the Navy, and meeting my wife, deciding to marry her were by far the best decisions I've made. After that, there's some middling ones and some good ones and nice. Everything. But like, what kind of future does someone that has that kind of childhood have? How are they supposed to make a name for themselves, a way for themselves, or even just try to grow as a person? And, grades were garbage. When you have that much turmoil in your life, you can't really focus on things like grades. A small town, northern Minnesota, and people know who you are. Mm-hmm. You don't know who they are, but they already know who you are. So there's no
grew up that way.
Yep. Yeah. There's no getting away from that name. So I joined the Navy. I wanted to get some opportunity. I wanted to get money for college. I know when my family had been to college, things like that. And I got away, and just to kind of create what I wanted for my own life.
I think something that struck me that you had said in a quote is a lot of us have rough stories. A lot of us, especially come into the military, I find, join it because they're not sure what they want to do, or they maybe didn't have the opportunity to go to college at the time. So they made that decision. And something you said is, tell me your story like you were the one responsible. I was like, wow. Not that, I've ever tried to be a victim of my circumstance, but to think about it and try to articulate your own story with filtering out everybody else. You know, some things are beyond our control, but how we react to them is such a huge thing. And I just was like, wow, I'm gonna have to like sit and like have a self-talk with myself and tell myself my own story and leave out all the other stuff. And my sister is really good at holding me accountable, and she'll be like, well, you made that choice. I'm like, where's the support? You know, and she's like, you made that choice. And I'm like, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about it. You do some ministry as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did become an ordained minister. I've done one wedding for some friends of mine. That was really cool. I've helped with Reboot Combat Recovery, a little organization that does a 12-week program. It's not just a love circle or sit around and complain. So it's taking you through a process of recovery and discovery, and actually able to help deal with people with PTSD and get through their stuff. And my life, and I was also certified as SYMBIS instructor. SYMBIS is an acronym: Save Your Marriage Before It Starts. We've had a pretty rock solid marriage, even though we haven't had the best examples, and we will love helping other people discover what it is about themselves and have those open and honest conversations so they can do it right from the start.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. When I look back, not having the great examples of relationships I can see as that almost like pre-counseling ahead of time can definitely help strengthen marriage, especially military marriages.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually getting ready to perform in Nashville, and the song that I chose to co-write with a Marine veteran friend of mine is about a military marriage and kind of the trials of one person always being gone and having to, and as a military spouse and a sailor, I did both. I switched both hats, and I kind of knew. So I really felt strongly about writing a song that talked about the hardships, but then also, at the end they come back together. And I really, really am inspired by people that can keep it together in the military and keep those long-lasting military. Because man, if you can survive that, I think you're set for life on your marriage if you can survive a career in the military as a military spouse. And so I commend your wife, definitely, and your children. So tell me a little bit about this awesome podcast you have. I saw something a while back that you were rated very highly on your podcast. As far as
I do bring on great guests like Lane Ballone and Stephen Kuhn and people from the Vetpreneur Tribe, and I bring on nonprofit leaders, business leaders, consultants, and people that have the special skills like, how do I set up MailChimp? How do I do Facebook Lives? How do I do marketing? How do I contact the media? And we bring all these people together to give people the how-to. I noticed in the nonprofit industry that people just have a big heart when they get started, and they don't maybe know a whole lot about running a nonprofit or how to run a business. And I got brought on to a couple of nonprofit boards a number of years ago. I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to show up and I wanted to help and do good things, and got invited on a couple of boards, authored a couple of books, and then raised like $500,000. Well, I got stationed in Bahrain in 2019. And for those of you who don't know, that's a little island nation in the Middle East off the coast of Saudi Arabia.
Swanky.
What's that?
It's swanky.
It's swanky. It is pretty swanky. I like it. If you're gonna be stuck, quote unquote, stuck in the Middle East, Bahrain, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, those are some places you would like to get stuck in the Middle East. They're wonderful places. But I was like, how am I supposed to keep doing all this cool, nonprofit stuff while I'm deployed? And someone's like, well, why don't you have, they're like, you have the golden voice. You can host a podcast. And I was like, really? My voice is that good? And they're like, have you heard you? It's wonderful. And I'm like,
it does sound, yeah, I can see that totally.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I guess I'll take your word for it. And just started having great conversations with people and really kind of dissecting the how to do whatever their specialty was, do their thing. And you're right, we got very highly rated. We've been ranked number 4 in the US, number 6 in Canada, number 3 in Switzerland. And this past November, Podcast Magazine and Steve Olsher and his crew, they highlighted some veteran veteran podcasts. And we got ranked in the top 25. We got ranked number 11 alongside of people like Jocko Willink and John Lee Dumas.
Wow, that's amazing.
Fire. And it's, like, I'm just as shocked as some people are. Like, hey, I saw your rankings. And I was like, what rankings? Like, just trying to.
You didn't even know.
Yeah, and just meet good people and have fun conversations. And they're like, no, it is really good. So I've got that going for me. And I've been getting tons of questions about podcasting. And I've bought a couple of guides over the years and some different things. And I wasn't really happy with them. So, like, no kidding. This week, as we're recording this, we just wrapped up like the ultimate and complete podcast guide from the Nonprofit Architect, covering all the facets of podcasting, how to get into it, how to figure out what you want to do, why you want to do it, how to conduct interviews, how to email guests, how to get celebrities, all these different things. It covers the gamut, as far as I know, of nonprofit. So we've got that available coming soon, which is pretty fun.
That's really cool, because there's so many and I just kind of accidentally fell into this. Somebody just hit me up and they're like, hey, you want to do a podcast for us? And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but okay. so
Yeah.
and as time went on, I was bringing on friends, and so it was a lot more comfortable for me to kind of speak with them, and most of the season 1 is friends that I know. But what I've found is I'm a very prepared person. I like to have my notes. Even when I was an intelligence analyst, like, I had my index cards, even though I knew what I was talking about. That was like my security blanket. But the
Right.
last couple of interviews that I've done, I've just kind of found, just like, let it flow and treat it more like a conversation. And it's been so much less stressful for me.
Well, then you should have really enjoyed our conversation with Lane. So he is such a
Yeah.
laid back guy that that conversation flowed quite well. It was a lot of fun to do, and I've known Lane for a long time. It was great to have him on the show.
And Steve Kuntz, you said, was on there too, and he's also on the docu-series. It's called Home Promise Heroes, that they were both featured on. So I watched their interviews with that, and then I saw him on your podcast page today, and I was like, hey, it's a small world
Well,
with
it
all of
really is.
this.
If you get into the veteran world at all, and you get into veteran nonprofits or the veteran entrepreneur world, you are going to immediately start seeing the same people over and over and over again. And
Mhm.
that kind of consistency is one of the ways you build your reputation. If you talk about podcasting, whatever you decide, whatever your periodicity is, if you're doing a daily show like John Lee Dumas for Entrepreneurs on Star, he started with 2,000 straight days of podcasts. 2,000 straight days, didn't skip a day. That wasn't for me. A weekly show is probably good, but even if you do a monthly show, if you write a monthly uh, blog and you host a monthly podcast and you have a monthly, Facebook Live, you have at least 36 pieces of content that you come up with every year. So it really quickly, even if you do something monthly, you can start building a library and a catalog of things that you've done. So it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be daily like JLD does, but he's since backed off. I'm sure the grind for 2,000 straight days was enormous, because that's what, 5 or 6 years worth of podcasting every day.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a lot. That's a
and
lot.
if you want to, I think his story was, if you wanted to get better, if you want to get good at something, you
True.
need that repetition. And if you're doing a monthly podcast, it might take you 10 years to get really good at podcasting. If you do a weekly podcast, like I've done, it wasn't maybe 10, 15 episodes when I really start coming into and deciding, who I was as a host, what I was looking for in guests, what am I holding them accountable to? Are they really providing value for my audience? And I think that's the key factor. Whatever your thing is, whatever your show is, whatever you're trying to do, as long as it provides value to the listeners, then you can bring on
Mhm.
anybody that's gonna meet that mark.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that's kind of how I had structured season 1 of this, is the value that you could bring to build your own veteran network. Like, what do you need when you get out? You don't just need a job, right? You need purpose. You need connection to other veterans. You need to have your finances, in order. And so I've been tagging a bunch of my friends to bring them on that kind of have a little bit of specialty, whether they have a company that does that, fulfills that value, or whether they have a nonprofit that fulfills that value. I wanted to provide the veteran community something that I didn't have when I got out a decade ago, that I wish I did.
Yeah.
And so it's been a great experience. And I had a great interview last night with Donnie O'Malley, and he's such a laid back guy. And he, even after the interview, was like, wow, that was a great interview. And I was like, thank you. And I kind of feel like I just kind of found flow doing this, just something that happened by accident. I actually really enjoy doing. So,
If
so
you're not
it's,
going to enjoy it, why do it? And to your point of transitioning, this is something that I've done a lot differently than others because I'm still active duty, and
Mhm.
I've been doing. I had a blog. I had a financial blog called Warrior's Wallet, and I did that for a number of years. And through my time doing it, and discovering Dave Ramsey and how to take care of your finances when they're a train wreck. Um, he gives you the foundation to do these things. And I got so excited. I was like, why is everyone not talking about this? This is amazing. And there's a lot of personal shame or whatever nonsense surrounding this stuff. But I mean, if you don't know about management, you take management classes, but somehow you can't take personal financial management classes. But we
that's
helped
true.
400, yeah, we helped 400 families pay off $6 million in debt before I got doing nonprofit stuff. And so, like, we live debt free minus our house in Oklahoma, which is $1,100 a month, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. We're on baby step 6 of the Dave Ramsey plan for paying off your house. So we're paying our house payment as it's structured, and then we're paying like an extra $1,000 a month to crush this thing. I've been still active duty. I've been building the skills, building the network, and trying to figure out what I want my life to look like because it's not always just getting the next job. Well, maybe I don't want a job. Maybe I don't want to go work for it. Maybe I
Mhm.
don't want to drive across town to go to some building to work on a project with people I don't know, to customers I don't know, or doing something I don't like doing. So one of the things that I'm doing, besides finishing my master's degree this next month, February, I'm so excited to get that thing knocked out.
Oh,
Um,
nice. I'm starting back to grad school next month.
for us, it was deciding what do we want our lives to look like post Navy, post
Mm.
retirement. If I can create something with consulting and with the podcasting and creating a couple products like the podcast guide, um, if I do it right and my bills are the way I want them to, and my income is the way I want it to, then I don't have to go work for another company if I don't want to. If I get a public speaking gig and they fly me down to Rio to speak and I decide to take my wife with me, and oh, by the way, since we don't have other responsibilities, maybe we just hang out for 3 weeks in Rio. Why wouldn't we?
Right.
But you can't just walk into that. You can't just fall into that lifestyle. It's something you have to work on. Where am I at now? Where do I want to be? And what do I need to learn? Who do I need to meet? What skills do I need to develop to get me to the point where I want to be? And I don't care if you want your life to be fishing and hunting every day after you're done with the military, or if you want it to be living in Manhattan, if you want to jet set like I'm talking about and travel, and what does that look like? What do you need to do? Who do you need to know? What skills do you need to develop in order to get you where you want to be?
That's that even makes me ponder because a couple years ago I had quit my government job and I really didn't know. I had kind of a semi plan, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a plan and a very well defined plan. And I hear that over and over from guests that come on. Is just have a plan in place and keep consistent. You're not always going to be perfect, but if you keep consistent with it, you
Mhm.
can have that lifestyle that you want. But many veterans think that it's just going to fall in their lap, and once they get out, because they got that DD 214, and I was the same way too, until I got a hard reality check. And so that's something that I've had to find myself, and that's really good information too, about finance, because I'm having the finance episode next week actually with my friend David Johnson, because he's written a book and is in the finance world and very successful entrepreneur. So that's definitely something that even especially like junior sailors, um, we were just basically surviving as junior sailors.
Yeah, you are. You are. You got the
And you have
degrees
no
out,
idea
you
all
got
these
the officer
options
degrees
available to
out.
you.
Yeah, you've got all these skills you don't know you need. Like when I talk to my people, especially over the last 4 years or so, I'm like, what are you doing? Through every day in the military, you've got your military duties, you've got the things you got to do to maintain standards, you've got the next rank to move up to. But beyond that, are you giving your professional development a little bit of time every day? Are you giving your personal development a little bit of time every day? And are you preparing for the future? At some point, you're getting out of the military, whether it's your choice or not, whether your enlistment's over, whether you retire, or the terrible other option out there that you just don't make it out alive. You're leaving the military at some point. So what are you preparing to do? Who are you meeting? What skills are you working on? What do you need to be successful in whatever you decide to do? And if you take the time to cultivate that over time, it's really a lot easier to transition. So I'm hoping, right? This is me pontificating, but based on what all the things that I've heard. And then I get some pushback sometime and like, oh yeah, well, I'm planning on being a lifer. I'm like, look, you get in a car wreck tomorrow and the Navy says they're done with you. And
Sure.
maybe they medically retire you and give you $2,000 a month. That does not prepare you or take care of your bills.
Mm, no. Yeah, I do know a lot of medically retired people actually, that find themselves, and I too was going to do, be a lifer, and circumstances just didn't allow for that when I got back from Afghanistan. And so I was left without a plan, and I had a job, but it definitely wasn't a job that paid a lot or that really had a future. And I wish I had access to all these great veteran organizations and nonprofits when I got out. So I know that it's so appreciative. I know so many veterans, they're so emotional and grateful for people like you that are out there trying to make a difference, and that you're active duty and you're still doing all this stuff. I don't know when you sleep. So we're so grateful that there are people out there like you that are trying their best to help all these veterans get it together and have the life that they want. And my last question to you is kind of different because you are still active duty, but I usually ask veterans, if you had a piece of advice, which you've kind of already given your advice for someone considering getting out, pretty much your answer is to have a plan. And do you mentor a lot of your sailors underneath of you to go to school, take advantage of the stuff that's going on that we have to offer you while you're in?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So like my dad was in the Navy, so I got a little bit of insight from him. There's a lot of attitudes you have throughout the Navy. I came as an E1 and I made it up to a first class in E6 before I transitioned through the Seaman Admiral program to get commissioned and go fly as a naval flight officer. There's going to be a lot of opinions about what you do. Oh, should you study for the exam? Should you not study for the exam? Should you do
Mhm.
this? Should you apply for officer? Here's the deal. At the end of the day, you decide what's best for you. If you want more money in your pocket and you only get twice a year to have the opportunity to get more money, take that opportunity. The Navy is going to get their work out of you. They're going to get their pound of flesh from you all the time. They're always going to get their work out of you. What do they have to offer? They have free programs, they have free schools, they have free qualifications, they have free training plans. They even have things helping you transition with the DoD Skill Bridge, where you can go work at a real live company for 6 months with the
Mhm.
promise for them to hire you. And the military is still paying you while you're a quote unquote unpaid intern, but you're walking right into a job that you've already auditioned for and trained for 6 months. So take advantage of what they have to offer. I initially came in, I wanted to do college right away. I really focused on my qualifications early, and then I started working on college, but it really wasn't until like my 7 year mark that I started getting involved in school. And I took one of those little billets that no one cares about, the ESO, the Educational Services Officer. And I did something with it. I got every single person in the schoolhouse that was an instructor there enrolled in US MAP, United Service Military Apprenticeship Program, and I got every single one of them enrolled in college because they're free, they're available. And when you have someone that's really encouraging you to do something, you're actually able to take care of yourself down the road with a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of direction, a little bit of, advice. Decide what's best for you. People talk to me about officer programs all the time. I'm like you're going to decide if this is best for you or not. Some of the reasons I decided is a paycheck, right? Everyone, obviously, the paycheck is much, much better on the officer side, but you get a chance to have a bigger umbrella of people. You get multiple departments, multiple divisions. You have policy that you get to implement, not just enforce as a chief or a senior NCO, where you're just enforcing policy. You get to write policy. You get to be in on the planning cycle and see what you're doing at the bigger picture. And those decisions are for you. Like my dad, for instance, he wanted to be commissioned, and people told him he should be. And he was a boiler tech, and he always wanted to make chief first. He always wanted to make E7 first and then apply. Well, he got out during the Reagan years, got back in the reserves, and at 23-ish years, he retired, but he never made chief. And because he didn't, he always had that as his kind of benchmark for applying to be an officer. And he didn't end up applying even a single time. And you talk to some of these older guys in the military, especially, and you say, did you ever think about doing this? And they're like, well, I did, but I wanted to fly, or I did, but I wanted to do this first. Or whatever it is you want to do, apply and don't let anyone stop you. There was so many people that told me, like, officer, why would you want that stuff? It's more money for my family, first and foremost. If nothing else, it's more money for my family. If you look at retirement from the enlisted ranks as an E6, as a first class, your retirement at 20 years is 20 grand a year, which is nothing. It's a $10 an hour job. My earliest opportunity for retirement, if I take it, is 50 grand a year as an O3E. That's 2.5 times what it would have been. And making chief, making senior NCOs, you go from making 20 grand a year to 24 grand a year in retirement. Tell yourself no. That jerk you see in the mirror every day, he's responsible for all your bills. You don't need that new boat. You don't need that new RV. You don't need that. Whatever it is, pay it off. I started paying off my bills as an E5, and let me tell you, the amount of flexibility that we've had in our budget, the amount of even as an enlisted guy before I got commissioned, the amount of breathing room that we got, all the fights when we decided on a budget and we started giving every month, we started paying stuff up. All of our fights about money, we haven't had one since. It's been over 15 years since I had a fight about money. Like, take care of your stuff, take care of your body, take care of your marriage, take care of your finances, because when it's all said and done, are you still going to have your health? Are you still going to have money? Are you still going to have your relationship? Or did you give it all to the military and now you're out and you've got nothing?
Finances just brings another stress that affects your mental and your physical health, and it's all connected, and it's like a domino effect. So it's important to cover all the bases of your health, and financial health definitely is one of them. And this is such great information. I can't wait to listen to more of your podcast. And I thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can we find everything about Travis Johnson at?
If you go to nonprofitarchitect.org, that is my website, and you'll see I've got the podcast player on there. Or if you're not a big fan of that and you want to go listen to where you listen, I'm on every stinking channel out there. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. Search Nonprofit Architect Podcast. I will come up. Or if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn and you search Nonprofit Architect, I'm going to be in there, and send me a message. There's nothing I like more than connecting with people on social media. It's one thing to kind of like follow someone's podcast, but we don't do it just to do it. We do it because we love the interaction. Or if you want to shoot me an email, nonprofitarchitect@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. And that wraps up our show today. This is 7 Echo Podcast, sponsored by 7 Eagle Group. I am your host, Heather Clark, bringing you the stories of fellow veterans, and in this case, active duty Navy officer, awesome guy, so that you too can build your own veteran network. Thank you, Travis, for being here today.
Hey, thanks, Heather, for having me on the show.